If the commander of the German battlecruiser Scharnhorst had a choice, he would have stayed in the safety of his heavily defended Norwegian fjord. But on the freezing, stormy Christmas Eve of December 24, 1943, Captain Fritz Hintz's personal desires meant absolutely nothing. The order to take the ship out into the violent Arctic Ocean had come from the very top. Adolf Hitler himself demanded an attack. The Scharnhorst was the pride of the Kriegsmarine. In the German fleet, she was widely known as the Lucky Ship, and that reputation was entirely earned. Since the beginning of World War II, this sleek, massive Leviathan had pulled off the impossible. She had wreaked havoc in the Atlantic. Alongside her sister ship, she had achieved the mathematically absurd feat of sinking the British aircraft carrier HMS Glorious, using only her naval guns. She had even survived the legendary Channel Dash, slipping right through the English Channel and surviving a direct mine strike right under the noses of the British military. Her secret cheat code was her heart. Engineers had packed her with a massive 160,000 horsepower power plant, allowing the 38,000-ton beast to reach a blistering speed of 31 knots. She could outrun almost anything that could kill her. But luck is a finite resource. And when the Scharnhorst sailed into the freezing darkness of the Arctic Ocean to hunt a British supply convoy, she sailed directly into a masterfully engineered, high-tech death trap. This is the story of the Battle of the North Cape, and the terrifying reality of fighting a naval battle entirely in the dark. By late 1943, the German surface fleet was hiding in the deep fjords of northern Norway. Their mere presence forced the Allies to spend massive resources defending the Arctic convoys carrying crucial Lend-Lease supplies to the Soviet Union. On December 23rd, German reconnaissance spotted Allied convoy JW-55B sailing near the Faroe Islands. They reported no heavy escort ships. It looked like the perfect target. Berlin ordered the Scharnhorst, accompanied by just 5 destroyers, to intercept and obliterate the convoy. But out in the Arctic Circle in December, the environment is actively trying to kill you. The polar night means there are 22 hours of absolute, suffocating darkness. The ocean is violently churning with storms and blizzards. Even at noon, the horizon is just a narrow, gray sliver. The optical rangefinders and artillery scopes on the warship were instantly covered in thick, freezing layers of ice. In these conditions, human eyes are useless. Survival depends entirely on radar. Under the command of Rear Admiral Erik Bay, the Scharnhorst and her destroyers spread out to search for the convoy. It was a standard tactical move, but it would have catastrophic consequences. Suddenly, towering columns of freezing water erupted around the Scharnhorst. She was taking heavy fire. The German radar operators scrambled to find the target. But before they could lock on, the ship violently shuddered. A 200mm heavy cruiser shell slammed directly into the ship's forward superstructure. It didn't sink the ship, but it triggered a catastrophic system error. The British shell completely destroyed the Scharnhorst's forward radar antenna. In a fraction of a second, the mighty raider was rendered completely blind from the front. Admiral Bay had just stumbled into a British screening force commanded by Rear Admiral Robert Burnett, consisting of the cruisers Belfast, Sheffield, and Norfolk. The British had used their vastly superior radar technology to spot the Scharnhorst in the dark long before the Germans saw them. Not wanting to fight a blind battle against an invisible enemy, Admiral Bay ordered the ship to pop smoke, turn around, and push the engines to their absolute limit. Relying on her blistering 31-knot speed, the Scharnhorst outran the cruisers and vanished back into the storm. Bay tried to loop around and hit the convoy from a different angle, but a few hours later, the British cruisers intercepted him again. This time, the Scharnhorst's gunners fought back fiercely, heavily damaging the Norfolk and crippling the Sheffield. But Bay knew his luck was running out. He was fighting blind in a blizzard. He aborted the mission and ordered the Scharnhorst to return to base. He thought he had escaped. He didn't realize that the British cruisers were just the bait. Unbeknownst to the Germans, British Admiral Bruce Fraser had laid a brilliant, high-tech trap. While the cruisers were distracting the Scharnhorst, Fraser was moving a massive execution squad into position to cut off her escape route. At the center of this squad was the mighty British battleship HMS Duke of York. As the Scharnhorst raced blindly through the pitch-black Arctic night, the sky suddenly erupted. Star shells burst overhead, illuminating the massive German warship in a ghastly white light. Before Admiral Bay could even react, a storm of lead ripped into his ship. The British radar had tracked him perfectly. The Duke of York fired its massive 14-inch guns. The very first salvos were devastatingly accurate. One shell completely destroyed the Scharnhorst's forward A turret. Another ripped through the anti-aircraft batteries. Despite the sheer shock of the ambush, and despite being practically blind, the German gunners proved their elite status. Less than 5 minutes after being ambushed, the remaining turrets of the Scharnhorst returned incredibly accurate fire, scoring direct hits on the Duke of York by aiming solely at the flashes of the British guns in the dark. But it wasn't enough. Admiral Bay knew he couldn't win a slugging match. He ordered the ship to turn and run. Incredibly, the battered, burning Scharnhorst began to pull away. Her massive engines were still pumping, and she began to outpace the British fleet. She was going to escape again. And then, the lucky ship suffered the ultimate fatal glitch. At a massive distance of 18 kilometers, a single, radar-guided 14-inch shell from the Duke of York fell from the sky and punched straight through the Scharnhorst's deck. It exploded directly inside the number 1 boiler room. The ship's speed instantly plummeted. The raider was suddenly dead in the water. She was absolutely helpless against what came next. Seeing the giant slow down, 4 British destroyers swooped in like wolves. They closed the distance and unleashed a barrage of torpedoes. 4 of them slammed into the Scharnhorst. To the absolute astonishment of the British, the burning, crippled German Leviathan somehow managed to restart her engines and push back up to 22 knots. But the death blow had been struck. She was losing steering and she was sinking. From the radio room, the final transmission was sent to German High Command. "We shall fight to the last shell." Over the next 10 minutes, 7 more torpedoes ripped into the hull. In the freezing, chaotic darkness, the Scharnhorst finally rolled over and vanished into the abyss. The battle was so chaotic and the night was so dark that the British didn't immediately realize the ship had sunk. This confusion delayed the rescue operation by over an hour. In the freezing Arctic waters, that delay was a death sentence. Out of a crew of 1,900 men, British destroyers managed to pull only 36 survivors from the freezing waves. Not a single officer was among them. According to the surviving sailors, when the order was given to abandon ship, the entire German command staff voluntarily took off their life jackets, handed them to the young enlisted men, and chose to go down with their ship. Months later, when Admiral Bruce Fraser was sailing back through those same waters on his way home from the Soviet Union, he ordered the HMS Duke of York to stop. He ordered his men to line the deck. They dropped a wreath into the freezing water and observed a minute of silence for their fallen enemy. Fraser turned to his officers and delivered a final, chilling tribute. "Gentlemen, I hope that if any of you are ever called upon to lead a ship into action against an opponent many times superior, you will command your ship as gallantly as the Scharnhorst was commanded today." If the terrifying high-tech reality of the Arctic convoy wars changed how you view naval combat, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that the dark, unpolished stories of history deserve to be heard. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the archives.